Thank you, Micheál Martin. I'm Taoiseach. At the time of the publication of the Mercer report in relation to pay to bankers and so on, the Minister of Finance, following on that, requested that banks would reduce the pay of bank workers by between 6 and 10%. Now, the impression at the time from yourself and others was this was designed for the fat cats within the banks, the people earning hundreds of thousands of euros. Now, the executives of the permanent TSB bank, however, responded to the Minister's diktat by ceasing its contributions to the defined benefit pension scheme and essentially winding up the scheme with devastating losses for ordinary workers in respect of their pensions. And the bank's response, Taoiseach, was only to target workers in the banks who were in the defined benefits pension scheme. 70% of the workers will suffer a devastating loss as a result of this action. The company had up to then provided 127 million, had provided for 127 million per annum in its books. It decided to cease paying that 127 million and have withdrawn it from the pension scheme. It hasn't gone ahead with the payment. Workers now, Taoiseach, and permanent TSB face a loss in their pensions of anything from 50 to 70% reduction. You're looking at people losing an expected pension of about 30,000 a year on retirement to 5,000 a year. That's how devastating it is. There is absolutely no recognition of length of service or indeed the amount of contributions that have been paid into the schemes up to date. Now, the government has washed its hands on this. The Minister, when he made the Mercer recommendation to the banks of the between 6 and 10% reduction, he said he was not going to be prescriptive, and has consistently held to that line. It's up to the bank executives to do what they wish. I remember you in here grandstanding with me and others saying, oh, this is all about the fat cats in the banks and they're going to have to lead by example. Well, they led by example, Taoiseach. They took very little cuts themselves. In this case, they're not getting any hit on their pensions. But they decided unilaterally to hit the workers via their pensions. No cut to payroll, no nothing. Absolutely indiscriminately, in an arbitrary unilateral manner, it is savaging the pensions of the workers in permanent TSB.
Thank you.
It is unfair, Taoiseach. It is wrong. And you have it within you to change this. And I would ask you, Taoiseach, would you first of all accept that it's unfair and that it's wrong? Will you secondly reassure this House that you will ask the Minister for Finance to engage with the executives of the bank to reverse this approach, which is a very cynical implementation of a government diktat in terms of an overriding pay reduction instruction to the banks. It's the people at the bottom of the pile are being hardest hit as a result of this particular action, Taoiseach. And I'm asking you to intervene and to reverse this.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
I don't know what the details of the issue that Deputy Martin raises here. Clearly, we had discussions in the House about the extraordinary levels of pay that were paid to chief executives of a number of the banks. A couple of years ago, these were as high as 3 million. When this government came into office, an upper limit of 500,000 was put on the pay of top bankers, and that hasn't been breached. In regard to the Mercer report, the Minister recommended to banks that they make a substantial contribution from pay and pensions of the order of 10%. The government haven't actually considered the Mercer report yet, Deputy Martin. In regard to the TSB that you mentioned, this is an internal decision that has been taken by internal management and has nothing to do with the Ministry for Finance. I understand that it's before the Labour Court. And therefore it's obviously not appropriate for me to comment without having all of the details that are before the Labour Court. But I take your point about the impact on ordinary workers and on those who might have very ordinary rates of pension. But it's an internal management decision by TSB, and as I understand it, Deputy Martin, it is before the Labour Court.
Actually, you have the submission since the end of April. The government had from the banks. It is extraordinary and incredible that you come in here and say you haven't a clue about this issue, that you have no detailed knowledge of this issue, despite the fact that you protested loudly in here that the Mercer report was going to be the be-all and end-all to get at the fat cats in the banks, the big executives and the big salaries. That was the context. The reality is, however, that it is hitting the workers, Taoiseach, at the lowest level in terms of their pension entitlements in a very discriminatory manner and a targeted manner. That's the reality, Taoiseach. And that is why people out there, 1,200 workers involved here, Taoiseach, in this particularly one institution. And that's why they feel there's a terrible disconnect between the official speak of government and the talk in here and what they're feeling on the ground and the experiences that they're having on the ground in terms of the implementation of these reports. The rhetoric that goes on means absolutely nothing to them when their pensions are being savagely cut as a result of this particular decision. Now, it is within the government. It's not good enough to say it's an internal matter for the banks on this occasion, because it's the government took a decision to tell the banks, go and find 6 and 10% savings.
Thank you, Deputy.
And you can't wash your hands of it, Taoiseach, and say, we don't care. It's not our business if the banks follow through on that instruction by hitting pensions that people have paid into for over 25 or 30 years. There are people, Taoiseach, in incredible states of anxiety about what this means for them in their own personal lives. They cannot believe that they got a communication from their unions and from the banks to say, sorry about this, but the pension that you thought you were getting is going to be cut by 70% or more. So that is the reality, Taoiseach. And workers are coming to us and saying this to us. And I find it incredible that you seem to be unaware of this, or that the government seems to be unaware of this. It has been raised to the Dáil by my colleague and others and other deputies in the House already over the last number of weeks. So I would plead with you, Taoiseach, to get the Minister for Finance to intervene in this case and not wash your hands of it and say it's somebody else's business.
Thank you.
Well, I reject your assertion that the government are washing their hands of this. This government set down a limit for the pay of senior bankers. The administration before that allowed situations where wages of up to 3 million were paid in respect of chief executives of banks. 3 million. Now, the pay levels set by the government have not been breached in any case. It's not. It's for you to say that government are washing their hands of this is just not. It's just not real. The Minister commissioned the Mercer report so that there would be a requirement to have a substantial pay and pension contribution from bankers in this regard. As I understand it, you're asking me to intervene, Deputy Martin, in a situation which is before the Labour Court. You are asking me to intervene in a case with the TSB. The consequence of an internal management decision is before the Labour Court, and you're asking the Minister for Finance to intervene in that. The Minister is well aware of what's going on here. The Labour Court, as you well know, is part of the machinery of the state for dealing with disputes. And this is a dispute that is not a consequence of the Minister's decision. It is an internal management decision of TSB. And like yesterday, you wanted the Minister for the Environment to intervene in the planning process. Today you want the Minister for Finance to intervene in a Labour Court hearing.